Do we have any suspect info, location, description, anything like that? That's a negative.
Police have been dispatched to the home of Joe and Olga Connell after getting a flurry of 911 calls reporting a shooting at their front door.
It sounded like 3 gunshots.
She's laying on the ground. She has blood all over her body.
And cops arrive at the newlyweds condo to find a critically wounded Olga lying motionless in a pool of blood, but still alive.
When I had arrived, the medics were on scene and they were down here working on Olga.
Corporal Kelly Richards was the first police officer at the crime scene.
She was breathing, but she was struggling, what maybe would be described as agonal type breaths. She was fighting for her life.
From a bullet to the head.
She had a gunshot wound to the cheek and would appear to be possibly exit wound out the back of the head.
And while medics are trying to keep Olga alive, police make another shocking discovery.
We have a second victim in the bushes here. A white male, multiple gunshot wounds.
Finding Olga's new husband, Joe, lying dead in a remote corner of the front garden.
His body was lying face down on the ground. He was positioned approximately right here. He had several gunshot wounds to the torso area, one apparent gunshot wound to the back of the head. His head was actually laying in his hand, and he had his hand out holding his cell phone.
Corporal Richards was hoping Olga would survive to tell her who did this to her and Joe.
Did she say anything? Could she even verbalize any words at all?
No, she didn't say anything.
Tragically, a short time later, Olga is declared dead in the ER.
Just the way that they had died was very tragic.
Joe's sister Kelly says she was so shocked when she learned about the killings, she called her mother to see if it was true.
And I said, Mom, has Joey been shot? And she was crying. She's like, she got out the words, Joey and Olga are dead.
Evidence at the crime scene suggests Joe and Olga had been ambushed by a gunman, or possibly 2 gunmen, lying in wait for them to return home.
We found several pieces of evidence that led us to believe that the shooters were right actually next to the front door.
And there were shell casings all over this place.
Yes, there was several shell casings of 2 different types of calibers, and there was also a few live rounds.
But without Olga, police have no eyewitnesses and very little other evidence to go on.
Any surveillance on this building at all?
No.
Robbery would immediately be discounted as a motive when police learn nothing had been taken from Joe or Olga.
He had his wallet with in excess of $100 in cash. Her purse was there. Her phone was there. She had a pretty large diamond ring that was on her finger. All that stuff is still there.
Police chief for the Newcastle County said this was not a botched robbery. We know that for a fact. This was a deliberate hit.
You believed early on that Joe and Olga were targeted.
Yes, and the way that they were killed, the ambush at their front door, I mean, the keys were still in the door.
And as the mystery deepens, wild rumors would begin to swirl around town. Among them, that Joe, a bodybuilder known to have used steroids, may have had a run-in with a drug-dealing Russian crime syndicate.
One of the theories was maybe the Russians were involved in the underworld steroid business. And maybe he had a bad deal with somebody.
But detectives don't buy it.
We were never able to find anything more to that theory.
They would also take a look at Olga's former husband, wondering if jealousy could have been the motive for the murder of the newlyweds.
We had to then investigate.
But Olga's ex is cleared after he provides police with a verified alibi, leaving investigators literally without a clue.
We didn't know what was going on. It was really a puzzle, I guess, to try to figure out.
And then detectives get what appears to be their first solid lead, shockingly pointing to one of Joe's own family members as the possible killer. His little sister and Olga's new sister-in-law, Kelly.
It was something that we couldn't just shove to the side. We either had to determine if it was credible or rule it out.
Friends of the family and even Kelly's own mother had told police they were suspicious of Kelly because she'd been locked in a bitter feud with Joe over a $20,000 diamond ring. Kelly sat down with Crime Watch Daily to set the record straight.
His ring was given to me by my father and my mom on my wedding day 10 years prior.
But her mother had taken the ring and re-gifted it to Joe's new bride as a wedding present.
Joe's mother wanted Joe to have a beautiful ring for Olga.
And Kelly is infuriated with her brother for even accepting it and leading Olga to believe he'd bought it.
On Joe's honeymoon, she texted him about it and sent some pretty nasty things.
Kelly would only become more angry when Joe finally returns the ring and she discovers the diamonds have been replaced with cubic zirconia.
I confronted Joe, and he was really angry at me for just confronting him. He was afraid Olga was going to find out where the ring came from.
And when the newlyweds condo just happens to be burglarized a short time later, Kelly is Joe's prime suspect.
Joe accused you of breaking into his home.
He did.
Was anything taken during that robbery?
All their jewelry.
Including Kelly's diamonds, which Joe had mounted on a new ring for Olga.
So you could understand why Joe thought you did that.
Yes.
Kelly can also understand why detectives are suspicious of her when Joe and Olga are murdered just a little more than a month after the burglary.
At what point did investigators begin to focus in and question you more?
I felt the heat immediately.
Next, Kelly tries to prove she didn't kill her brother and his new bride.
You know his sister? Yeah.
And police uncover another person with a possible motive for murder. And it's another shocker. Joe's friend and business partner.
Police spent a lot of time investigating him and looking into that.
I think initially they were covering all their bases. You know, here's someone who had a feud with her brother at the end of his life and wasn't talking to him.